So really thrilled to be back and to have you both join us, and being your first time on stage. This is very exciting, so no pressure. Caroline mentioned that you started just around the corner from here in 2010, July 2010, so nearly 4 years ago. Amazing things have happened since then, but I want to bring you back to the beginning. What was the initial vision for TechHub? Mike, I'll go to you first.
Well, I think we both came at it sort of parallel lines. I'm best known as a journalist, and I've been a journalist since the mid-90s, writing about technology and working for various media outlets. And I'd been running around Europe, working principally for TechCrunch, which is now a pretty big breaking news site about startups and venture capital, but a few years ago was just one of the many technology blogs out there. And I'd been running around looking at kind of clusters, because one of the things that happened in the Silicon Valley was you got this enormous cluster. Mm-hmm. And why were these clusters not developing in Europe? And I had a bit of a problem, because wherever I went, something would happen, but then there was only an event, and then people would disperse. And I looked across to the US particularly, and saw this whole co-working movement sort of arise, but it hadn't really been happening in London particularly. And then one of the places I went to, for instance, was Dublin, and they'd sort of set up something called the Digital Hub. And I came back and I started blogging about why was there nothing here. And a few people sort of came out of the woodwork and said, this is a good idea, but we're all happy meeting in pubs and things like that. And then I'd known Elizabeth for many years,
yeah.
a few years, about 10 years, and we'd sort of been running around in this similar sort of technology scene. Elizabeth was one of the early players in the early .com boom around technology, digital media particularly, and we were all friends. So we had lunch one day in 2009, and you kind of come up with some ideas of your own.
Yeah, so I'd been working on ideas around how to bring people together. So I'd done a lot of things around communication and events and communities and that sort of thing. And I always really liked the idea of creating a physical space where people could come together to work and meet each other and run events and that sort of thing. And so we got together for lunch, hadn't seen each other for a bit, and we were both talking about these ideas, and I said, I really want to do something around this, and put a financial plan together. It was really important to both of us that it be kept as affordable as possible, because you can make things more plush and expensive, and people will still use them. But for us, it was really important that the very, very early stage companies should have a place where they could come together. And so we started sort of putting ideas together around this. We talked to people about it, and everybody said, yeah, this sounds like a great idea. Right. And then we sort of announced that we were going to do it. I think it was at a TechCrunch event, and you said, get up for 60 seconds and just say, we're going to do this thing. And 60 seconds later, I got off the stage and was completely and utterly mobbed. I was 3 people deep. I went completely hoarse because people are saying, will this be open next week? How much will it cost? And VCs giving me their cards saying, can we find a lot of startups here? And when is this happening? And we realized, well, people really, really need something like this.
So it doesn't surprise me that there was a great deal of interest. I actually lived in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
I'm Canadian, but I lived here around that time. And I remember a digital Shoreditch event where it was actually held on the other side of the wall, which is actually not officially Shoreditch. And I thought that's extraordinary that we wouldn't have the right kind of space in Shoreditch to have the digital Shoreditch event. When did you realize, when you started running it, that you were onto something?
We knew it before we launched. We started
a viral campaign before we actually had a building.
Yeah, we said, we'd been talking about this idea, people were really excited about it, and so we said, tell us in 60 seconds or less on video why you want TechHub
on YouTube.
On YouTube, and you'll get, you can win a free membership when we open. Yeah. And we didn't. We were sort of asked a couple of people that we knew to do one, just in case. And we were inundated with people saying in their own words why they needed TechHub, and people were incredibly creative about it. People would sort of video themselves being climbed on by their children while trying to work. One guy put his entire contents of his office outside in the snow, saying, "I really need a warm place to work. This would really help me." Yeah.
Another guy did a video of him wandering around aimlessly at bus stops trying to sort of check his iPhone and I wish I had someone to go.
Yeah. That was Tim Morgan.
Tim Morgan.
Yeah, from Mint. And a guy did a backwards rap, and it was crazy. And so that was when we realized people really wanted this. And we also, we released a limited number of founder memberships before we had the building, before anything, and it was completely oversubscribed. People really wanted to support it.
It wasn't just the founders, people who wanted to cap companies, also the investors as well. They even got VCs actually posting up YouTube videos in sort of funny continental European accents, just for, just mucking around almost, just saying, Europeans want to get into London and don't know where to go as well. Yeah. And I think the other thing that was going on was that, in the conference business, people, want to connect with the community via conferences. But you go to conferences, it costs you, £1,000 or some enormous amount of money. Really what you want to do is you want to go to a place where people are there all the time. And I think that was a way, we solved that problem to some extent in that respect.
And how do you think that changed things? Because it's interesting to talk about this from the perspective of 2014, because now we're in a situation where the government has launched this Tech City initiative, which is, I guess, itself a few years old. Mm-hmm. You have Prince Andrew taking selfies at the palace. It's a totally different world. There's a lot more awareness around startups and what it takes to support entrepreneurs. But what do you think TechHub in particular did to change the community?
I think that one of the things I think we always felt was that we were going to be bringing this whole idea up through the community rather than trying to impose too much of a kind of a set business model on the idea. We set up a viral campaign to get feedback on what was going on out there about what people wanted, and then that changed out what our ideas about what we should provide as a community space, and also for around events and a sort of a whole community atmosphere. Right. And I think, if you look at what was happening in East London, I think we should also talk about what happened in London to some extent. You had great meetups happening, but they didn't know where to go. There was nowhere to congregate other than rooms over pubs and things like that. And so. You kind of, at the end of the huge irony, of course, in the tech and the digital space is that actually you do need to meet people in real life and and talk to them in real life.
Yeah, I think it's, there was always all those stories and people asking questions about Facebook and Twitter and, well, what does this mean? Do we not really have real friends anymore and all that sort of thing? But I think, like me, a lot of people use a technology as a facilitator for getting together with people.
Mm-hmm.
You connect with people online, but offline connection is still really important. Mm-hmm. And so, I think it was about having one place where you could come and find the things you needed and be able to work in an appropriate environment. We always said that people just needed coffee, power, Wi-Fi, and each other, and they were the four things that
and
you
maybe
needed.
A loo.
If I remember in the early days, we didn't have a lot of money because we didn't have a load of capital investment or anything like that. And I remember saying, well, chairs are kind of expensive. If we have to choose between Wi-Fi or chairs, do you think people will sit on the floor? And it was like, yeah, hands down. We didn't have to do that, fortunately. But I think they would have, because we had a 100 megabit fiber line, and at the time, everyone was like, "Oh my God, that's amazing! Let me at that." Yeah. I don't care about that.
To support your point, tech has gone very mainstream now, but then we were still, kind of in the realm of the geek, basically.
Right. So we've known each other for a few years. You covered tech for some time before that here in London. You actually wrote for the Industry Standard, right? Is that?
Yeah.
Which is this big magazine that had a lot of money for a short time.
So before you were born.
There's a book written about it, which is
Starving to Death on $250 million.
Yeah, exactly. And I read through it and I was like, oh, Mike Busher is in it. I didn't realize that. How does the current tech scene, or how did the tech scene of, say, 2010 compare to back then? Was there anything you learned from that helped you with this venture?
Well, I think from our perspective, TechHub as a concept very much came out of the developer community and the engineering community.
Right.
Well, I think one of the things that happened over the last, when Web 2.0 as a phrase started re-emerging around about 2005, was that it was about the fact that in 1998, 1999, 2000, I was still a just a jobbing technology reporter on magazines and newspapers. And I think to do a startup then, you would have to have a lot of money. You would have to buy your own servers, get your own connection, your own ISDN lines, dedicated ISDN lines. People just don't even know what ISDN stands for anymore. You had to do all of that stuff, and it was a lot of money, capital investment to do a technology startup. As a result of things like Linux and the open source movement, and eventually people thinking about the web as a platform, not just as a place where you put HTML web pages, we got this whole Web 2.0 thing happening. And that's where it came from. People suddenly had the tools, the democratizing tools, to create companies and platforms in their back bedroom. And at that point, the world of work changes immeasurably, completely changes. And all of a sudden, you don't necessarily need an office in the same way. You need spaces, you need communities. You don't need offices in the same way. And I think that's been the fundamental change over the last few years.
And how is it working day to day? You mentioned coffee and power. It was interesting because I was in San Francisco, I guess 2 years ago, and I interviewed Philip Rosedale, who started Linden Lab, which is the company that did Second Life, and he had another company for a short while called Coffee and Power, which was basically built to support this new way of working through co-working spaces. And he talked a little bit about this being a digital fog, that mobile technology has brought the internet into our everyday lives, and it surrounds us. Maybe not sometimes when we're underground, but generally. The idea, I understand the concept of TechHub. So how does it work day to day in terms of people working together but on different projects, on different companies?
So everybody who comes to TechHub is working on something themselves. It might be a small team or sometimes a larger team. Our Old Street TechHub is teams from about 6 to about 30 people. And the thing that gets me up in the morning, people say, why do you do it? Is when you walk in and you see a couple of people who probably didn't know each other before they started being a member of TechHub, clustered around one laptop or one monitor, talking about one of their companies, talking about their product and helping each other out with it. And for me, that's really, it's the alchemy that happens in a room. It's things being the sum of more than just their parts. And so everybody's working on their own things, or their company's product. But there's this sense that you can ask other people. You can both learn from their specific expertise. I'm having a PHP problem over here. You're an expert in that, come and give me a hand. But also just the experience that's in the room. Because often when you go to events, you hear from people who made it 10 years ago. And that's great, and it's valuable, and we do those sorts of events as well. But sometimes learning from someone who's 6 months further on from you is incredibly valuable, because they can say, oh yeah, that we had that issue too. You're going to want to do it this way. Don't. It ends up being really expensive and painful. And here, use this guy. He was amazing. That makes a difference. The other thing is that being an entrepreneur is incredibly, it can be incredibly lonely, can feel quite isolating, because you've quit your job to work on your crazy internet thing, and your parents are saying, why the hell have you quit this amazing job to work on your crazy internet thing? And you feel like this is such a massive risk. And being in a room with 100 other people who are also working on their crazy internet thing, suddenly it feels like, I can do this, I can take this risk. Yes, it's a risk, but it's not that much of a risk, because lots of people are trying this, lots of people are doing it. This is a mindset that I have that has worked for other people and is working for other people, and I want to do this too, and I can be part of something, even if I'm just working on my own.
And are there any examples you can point to of people who've benefited from that? In terms of a substantial, I don't know, they reached some milestone or some goal through
Well, I remember one of our companies, the founder saying to me, I came in on the weekend. It was the Saturday after the Friday night of one of the legendary TechHub birthday parties. Keep an eye out for that coming up in July. They're always really good fun. And he said, so I was in the office on Saturday morning. He said, and there was only one other person in, because everybody else was completely hungover. And he said, I was too, but I managed to, drag myself in. And it was a guy who sat at the opposite end of the room, and he said, and we'd never met each other, but we both walked in, we're both like, and we got talking, and he became their CTO and invested, I think, in their company. And it was the kind of thing where, it's that just sort of that serendipity of just you're both there at the same time on the same day, and something more happens with your company than would have otherwise.
So there still is an ethos of sharing in the internet community.
Yeah.
In some ways.
One of the kind of like, little sort of things that we thought about in the early days was that we kind of wanted to manufacture serendipity. We wanted to create a community in a space where serendipity would like really work in your favor.
Right.
And also act as a locus point. But all sorts of funny things happened in the early days and continue to happen even today. When we first started, basically the place was empty because we were still kind of a new concept.
Right.
But it was the era of Silicon Roundabout, when Silicon Roundabout was getting big, and we had a Russian television crew turn up one day, and came and said, so Silicon Roundabout, what is this? As you use Silicon Roundabout kind of thing. Russian? This is my version of Russian. And then it ended up, we only had about 4 people in the space, but we tried to make the space look very full with 4 people. So like get the cameraman to shoot, from about 4 people in these 4 people at different angles, And
it was hilarious though, because they said after the interview, and we asked them when it was going out, they said, we have 100 million viewers.
Yeah.
On our channel. And so when we watch the thing, of course, we're dubbed in Russian, so we have absolutely no idea
what we're saying.
No idea what we're saying or what they're saying we're saying, but apparently 100 million Russians.
It went out on Russia Today.
Took a look at
Happier times.
Yeah.
Why has this idea of Silicon Roundabout or Tech City, whatever you call it, taken off to such an extent? Because, as I mentioned, I think I moved here in 2006, and I remember when Richard Moross moved to the building. It was Richard Moross, the founder of Moo.com, took an office on the Old Street Roundabout where he basically, because of the high ceilings, he had to get a big space, and because he had a big space, he had to invite a lot of other companies in. So in a strange way, it was kind of a little bit of a forerunner as a co-working space. And that's where Matt Bidoff of Doppler famously coined the term Silicon Roundabout. But it's extraordinary when you think about that, that moment, what was going on then and where we are now. Why has this happened, do you think?
This area, it has traditionally had a lot of artists and designers and independent restaurateurs and shop owners, and those people have a lot in common with entrepreneurs. They're all people who want to do things differently. They want to do their own thing, and so I think there's been a bit of a sense of, okay, the rents were cheap, no longer. but they were at one point. And it was a place to come where there was this sense of being independent, of doing things differently. And once you get a few companies together, and once they're talking to their friends, it's the usual networking thing. You just start to accrete more and more companies.
I think actually the other thing is that technology entrepreneurship can be, I think you could very well characterize it as much a creative, almost liberal arts movement as much as anything else, because I think the creativity that comes out of a lot of startups, because they come up with a product, they don't really know what it's for. I mean, when they invented Twitter, nobody really thought this would be actually a useful thing in any kind of a way. And that's a similar kind of thing. The Doppler guys, or many of the companies that came out of that era, they were just inventing things. And that meant that has that sort of creative feel to it, and that benefits from this clustering effect. I mean, I remember back in the day when Soho was big for the advertising agency world and what have you, and it's the same sort of thing that happened over here, but it was around technology, but technology done in a different way. It wasn't the old IT, like IT systems and green screen and terminals and all that kind of thing from back in the day. It was this is actual creative movement.
So when you started, there was a real need for co-working space in this area, but they've really proliferated since then, both in Shoreditch and around the city. So you've got the Trampery, several central working locations. Google Campus has a central working, and you're based at also have a location at Campus London, I should say. Sorry. How do you stay fresh? What sets TechHub apart from these others? Because there is actually a lot of competition right now.
We focus on being a community rather than a co-working space. It's more like we're a community with space attached. Space is a tool, like internet is a tool, like anything is a tool. And so it's about not focusing on the space itself so much, but what happens in it. Sometimes one of the team said, we don't sell you a desk, we sell you the person you're sat next to, and the person that you talk to while you're boiling the kettle and that kind of thing. And that's what's really important. You can have a desk anywhere, you can work anywhere, and lots of people do, and it's great, and you can build great companies anywhere. What it is about having these other people around you, but also having the opportunity to access things you might not otherwise be able to access, whether because of financial reasons or just literally you can't get these things. So we get some amazing speakers to come in. We sometimes do those events that are just members only. I remember we did one with Jimmy Wales, founded Wikipedia, that was members only. So getting, being in a room with 20 other people and Jimmy Wales and getting to ask him whatever you want is a great opportunity that you might not otherwise be able to get. Similarly with things like we help quite a number of our companies get great press and PR opportunities, because when someone comes in to interview me, we have a chat and then I'm like, come and meet these wonderful mobile companies that we have who've just been raising money. And so for a very small startup, that can be something really challenging for you to gain access to.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
No,
I think the other thing it's done is it solved a real problem for startups that, you get a 2-3 person startup, so sure they could go to any co-working space or whatever, but TechHub's also come up with great team spaces as well. So it's not just about, being in a big mosh pit, it's about also getting your own office as well, and solving that kind of just that headache of getting your own space, but still being part of the community, and also just created a great interface between big companies that want to reach down into this innovation ecosystem, as well as ones who want to partner with big companies as well.
We have a number of big companies that partner with us. Google is the obvious one, but also we work with BT, for example. They run programs with us where companies focusing on a particular sort of product theme can then get mentoring and help from BT, but also work out how their product can work with BT or be promoted via BT's, obviously huge customer base. So if you're a consumer product and you can sort of have BT telling however many million of their customers, oh yeah, we're now working with these guys with this amazing product, that's a great opportunity. And BT gets access to innovation that may be challenging for them to do as a large organization.
Okay, I just want to ask two final questions before we go to questions from the audience. So this event is sponsored by Thomson Reuters. I haven't referenced them in all of the talks before, but it seems relevant here. I used to work for Reuters, obviously, and I remember the story of how it got started. It was like the Baron, Julius Reuter, traveling around the world and basically creating what became a global brand from London, though he was initially German. How convinced are you, or what is the likelihood that another global company can come of one of these types of environments? Do you think that we are fostering the kind of, companies that are capable of growing and do you have any?
Well, I mean, just to speak to that briefly, Elizabeth can tell you that TechHub's going to have a good crack at becoming a global brand. But aside from that, I think that absolutely, yes. I mean, London is an incredibly international place now. I mean, companies come here from all over the world, not just to access Europe, but to access international markets. And similarly, European companies come to London to go to the US and vice versa. I think that the thing about it, I personally, as a reporter as well, I also think that we should kind of stop talking about like where we're from necessarily, but just saying that we're going global from here. So we go global from here. We're going to Europe. We're going to the UK. We go global from London and from Europe. And a particular mix of people that you get in London now is incredible. The talent is amazing, and so I think that, I was just having a chat with a venture capitalist only this afternoon along the lines of the amount of business and companies that are going, that basically going to be much bigger than Silicon Valley over the next few years, and it's not something they're particularly aware of. And I think London is a natural place, and and I think also, the good thing about that, entrepreneurship now is also a global movement. I'm writing a story right now about the technology clusters appearing in Beirut, for instance. One of the last places on earth you'd think that technology clusters have come from, and that's totally happening, and the connections being made, are happening all over the place.
And what is your interest in expansion? Because you've been expanding. You've got other offices in the UK, so Manchester and Swansea.
Manchester and Swansea, yep.
And then Riga and Bucharest, and you're moving into Bangalore and Berlin.
Bangalore is happening at the moment. We have some of our team over there right now, so that'll be opening this summer. Okay. The vision was always global domination, really.
I just wanted an office with coffee and Wi-Fi.
Before we even launched, we had people emailing us saying, I want to do TechHub Oslo, I want to do TechHub, Mumbai. And it was because people understood the concept. Oh yeah, this would be incredibly useful for either, a becoming more established tech community in their city, or a really sort of nascent one. And we ended up with a list of 80 different cities where there were people saying, I want to do this with you now. Then that was just in our first year. And keeping up with that was really challenging because we didn't have the resources. We opened with, Mike painting and one sort of front of house person.
He does physical labor.
Me running around. Yeah.
I built all the chairs.
He's a good chair.
I built all
guy.
the chairs. She built all the tables.
Yeah, I learned to weld. It's amazing the things that you discover that you can do when starting a business. So, and it's really fun actually.
I think that
we always wanted it to be.
I think
international.
We didn't really. I think we were slightly taken surprise. I think the whole Silicon Roundabout thing and the Tech City thing that came afterwards, which was good fun, and I think it's great that they're banging. It's the job of government to bang the drum about entrepreneurship. They should do that totally. But we were sort of taken by surprise by how much, and I think it's always it was the right time, right place, right time. Classically, right place, right time. Part of the zeitgeist, and I think this is really the next industrial revolution, and global technology entrepreneurship also wants to know where to go to meet other entrepreneurs, and I think TechHub could totally fulfill that role if it, and it's just a matter of pushing an open door, I think.
And this is we what Mike was talking about earlier about going global from somewhere. It's one of the reasons that we want a tech hub in every city, is because you can build a business from anywhere, and most tech entrepreneurs are focusing on globalization right from the very beginning.
Right.
And so we just want to be able to connect people. And so it's great for us to see people from Riga popping into TechHub in London, or people from Swansea going to Manchester. I brought pictures if you want to.
Yeah, that's true, actually. I'm sorry. Why don't we look at those
take a
before
look
we
at
move
them.
to questions?
Matt suggested that so that people get an idea of what it
These look
actually
amazing.
is.
Yeah, when compared to the last office.
Our very first one, we
You
didn't
had
have a ceiling. Well, actually, we've continued that motif in certain places.
I can tell that Mike didn't build any of this.
Yeah, no, the first.
Mike wasn't involved in.
The first one, I basically ripped it out, everything out.
A lot of aggression out there.
So where is this? This is
the
just on the Roundabout.
The previous one, TechHub Old Street, is on the Roundabout, just behind Shoreditch Grind. If you look up when you are on the Roundabout, you will see a row of coloured lights. There's no picture of it here, and that's us. There's a big, sort of boring-looking blue glass building, row of coloured lights. Actually, there's now 2 rows of coloured lights, because we've just taken the 7th floor as well as the 2nd floor, because 50% of our companies have gotten 50% bigger in the 3 months since we moved in. So
Is that a good thing for you?
it's a good thing for them, so it's a good thing for us.
Oh, okay. It's still problematic, though.
It's more space all the time is what we're looking for, just trying to keep up with it.
So is this part of this? You're also still in campus London.
Yep, so we're in
right?
Campus London. We're the largest partner, along with Google, of Campus London. We have 2 floors there, and this is one of them.
Okay, great.
So this is TechHub in Swansea. This is, the whole space doesn't look like this. This is just a little corner. They wanted to go with the traditional gentleman's club type feel, which I'm not 100% sure about, but it's certainly comfy.
Yeah.
This is TechHub in Manchester, which was the second one that we opened in the UK after London, but the third one overall. And in Riga, they're actually moving into, so Manchester has just moved into a new space. Riga has just moved into a new space as well, and Bucharest is about to move into a new space too. So they're all full at the moment, and all need more room. And so that's kind of what it looks like. People getting together, talking about things. I don't think there's been any pictures of the event spaces, but we run events at every single tech hub, because it's a really important part of getting people together, getting them to learn things, be inspired, connect.
Well, listen, guys, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. It's really exciting to have this conversation. I've learned a lot. Elizabeth Varley, Mike Victor.
Thank you.